What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Writers Guild Foundation's Inside the Writers Room with Based on a True Story. I am your host, Hilliard Guess. You guys have seen me all over the place at the Writers Guild doing good things. Super excited for this episode. Thank you guys for having me. And let me introduce you to this amazing panel we have today. We're going to start off with the showrunner, Annie. Am I pronouncing it right? Is it Weisman or Wiseman?
Weisman.
Wiseman, my
Yeah.
apologies. All right, Annie Weisman, showrunner. Jaclyn Moore, EP writer. Max Searle, co-EP writer. Spindrift, she goes by Spin. I just heard. I like that Spin. That's cute. Spindrift Beck, co-producer. Amelia Swedeen, is that correct?
Perfect.
Yeah, I got it like
Yeah.
that. Story editor and Debbie Ezer or Debbie Ezer, script coordinator. Welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Let's start right here with you, Annie, really quick. Actually, I want to go down a quick run through everybody, through people who don't know you guys. You guys would all give me like a maybe just like a 2 minute who you guys each individually are, if that's okay. Just so the audience gets a sense of who you. We could start with you, Andy. We all know who you are, but let's just say hey.
Hey, so I'm Annie Weisman and been a TV writer, member of the Writers Guild for over 20 years now. And I just came up through network TV and then into the streaming world. And I, have been running shows for the last 3, 4 years and got the chance to create a show on Apple TV Plus called Physical and did that for 3 years, and then got the opportunity to take over as showrunner on Based on a True Story in the second season, which is out now on Peacock, and got the opportunity to put a really cool writers room together that most of whom you see represented right here.
Awesome. Jaclyn.
My name's Jaclyn Moore. I've been in the Writers Guild for a little over 10 years. And I came up also through like network TV, mostly network comedy, and then moved over to streaming stuff about 5 or 6, nope, way longer ago now. That's weird. With Dear White People on Netflix, which I worked on for 4 years, and then show ran the final season of with Justin Simeon, and then have been mixing show running and EP and all that nonsense for the last few years too. And I was lucky enough to get brought into this by Annie.
I see you out there killing the game, Jacqueline. I got the videotape. Um, we'll go over to Max. You have a moment, Max? Are
I
you there?
have I have such a moment. I have so many moments. Uh, I'm not driving right now. I just want that to be clear. I'm parked. Um,
Thank you.
I just staying safe. My name is Max Searle. I guess I've also been in the Writers Guild a little over 10, 12 years, something like that. Which is crazy. I also came up in network TV, more sitcoms. Started on a show called Two and a Half Men. That was my first kind of break, and then went on to do some more streaming stuff. A show called Lady Dynamite. Did a show on FX called Dave. I showrun a show on TBS with Nassim Pedrad called Chad. And recently created a show with Shea Serrano for Netflix called Neon. And just was so fortunate to find my way onto the staff with all these wonderful writers.
Awesome. How about you, Spin?
I'm Spin Beck. I got into the guild, I think about 4 years ago or so, probably. Came up many moons ago, like 4 years ago, on a network crime procedural, FBI Most Wanted, Dick Wolf show run by David Hudgens. Got to do 3 years on that show, which was awesome to learn the ropes of the procedural and in terms of production and all that. And then was really lucky that Annie took a chance on hiring me onto this non-procedural, which has been really awesome.
Procedural elements. You kind of taught us a lot about cops.
There's elements in there for sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Debbie?
Hi, I'm Debbie Ezer. I've been a member of the Writers Guild since 2021. I, used to be a practicing attorney. I was a litigator who hated to fight and needed to write. And so I've been working my way up in TV, worked in many writers' rooms as writer's assistant and script coordinator, and gotten the chance to write some freelances on shows like The Good Doctor, and was lucky enough to get the opportunity from Annie to get to co-write an episode in season 2 of Based on a True Story. I was also worked as the script coordinator on season 1.
Awesome. And finally, Amelia.
My name is Amelia Swedeen. I joined the Writers Guild, I think, 10 days before we went on strike. So it was an experience. This wonderful show based on a true story. It was only my second writer's room, so I was really fortunate that Annie took a chance on me and let me try something new. I came up as an assistant mostly through the Power universe on Stars, so that was a very hard crime hour-long drama, so hopefully brought some crime elements, but then got to learn a lot of new comedy skills as well with these wonderful people.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. Thank you for that. Just want everybody to get a sense of who everybody was in case they didn't know you all. I notice America seems to be like totally addicted to serial killer shows, including myself. My producing partner is one of those people who always, you come over a house and there's always some documentary on with some serial killer. I'm like, girl, what is up with you? You know, it's just so funny. What do you guys think is going on with America that we are so into this? I'm saying this in a positive way, by the way. You know, what do you think the curiosity that we have about these serial
I
killers?
mean, this is what we talk about a lot. It's kind of the subject matter of the show, because it's this kind of meta show about the fascination with serial killers, with true crime storytelling. And like you said, your producing partner is a woman who's obsessed with it. And that's the thing that is, sometimes surprising to people, is that like women, moms in particular, are like the biggest drivers of this interest. And so that doesn't, at first, it doesn't compute, right? It feels like, well, why are, people in charge of, why are women who are arguably, the most vulnerable to these killers like so fascinated by it? But then you kind of dig into it a little bit and you think, well, of course, like the thing you're most afraid of is what you want to
Mhm.
try to understand and try to kind of dig into the stories of and get clarity and understanding of like, how does this work? It helps you feel some sense of control, in a really scary world that doesn't feel like it's getting any less scary day by day, does it? And so that was kind of that's really what we dug into. That is the meat of what we talked about every day in the room, and so it's really fun. It was really fun to get this, like you just heard everybody introduce themselves. Everybody has a very different background personally, a very different set of personal experiences, and very different, comes from different genres of writing. So we love that mix of approach. It just allowed us to kind of come at it from different angles.
And I love that. That's definitely something I wanted to talk to, of course, like, how you put together the room at some point. But I was thinking about, as I was listening to each individual, about how different shows they came from. Like some people came from crime or whatever. And, you're building your so-called baseball team, if you will, which everybody has individual superpowers. So I'm always curious of, as I'm listening, when you watch a show, you think it's a room full of mostly comedy writers, but it's clearly not that. People have different superpowers based on, where they were. So I can tell it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's like putting together like a really, really great and dominant baseball team like the LA Dodgers, right? I just like saying that to Max Searle because he's a Dodger hater, and one of the things he had to endure during the writers' room was was the just the dominance of the Dodgers, and we talk a lot about how putting a great team together, putting a writers' room together.
I gotta go, guys. This has been fantastic.
Don't
And
get
also
it bad,
Jaclyn
Max.
being a Cleveland fan, right?
Yeah.
A Guardians fan. also had to endure some of that as well. Although, you guys, both of your teams had a lot of strengths this year. I don't want to seem patronizing or condescending. No,
Were,
it's true.
were you
Yeah,
guys,
very true.
was your writer's room in person, or were you guys on Zoom this time, or what was going on?
We were in person, and on the well, we moved rooms at one point, but for at least a lot of the season, we were on the Universal lot, which is always such like a treat to be. I don't know, to be like in, you're working across the street from like Alfred Hitchcock's old office. So especially as you're making like a thriller and like who's the killer kind of show. There's something kind of cool about like hearing the tram talk about Alfred Hitchcock every day as they drive by our office 600 times a day.
That's hilarious. I like that.
Yeah, and
Um,
shooting in LA,
but
shooting a show about and set in LA and LA is a, you know, rarer and rarer gift, but really important also.
it's funny you just brought up the LA thing. One of the things I do love about the show, and I love a lot of things about the show, let's be clear. This is one of those binge where like you can't not hit the next, button to go to the next episode. Like it's one of those shows. It's so good. The act outs kill me, like they're that strong. And it's funny, it's just sidebar, some of your act outs during the show could end the show. Like they're that strong. You know what I mean? Literally. See, I'm getting the geeking all out here.
Yeah.
Okay. I do that from time to time. Let me ask you something. This is for anybody to answer, particularly you, Annie, and maybe you, Jaclyn. Um, when you came on board for season two, how did you guys take what they did in season one and expand on it? Because it was so strong season one, so you knew you had to go. How do we take it even further than that? Because that cliffhanger at the end of the end of episode, the finale was, where are you going to go from here? So just curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting experience to come into a show where you weren't involved in the first season and there's a cliffhanger and it clearly was successful and people loved it. And so there's a mixture of like pressure to not like screw it up. You don't want to be, oh, we came on and then it was good until they got there. Like, you don't want that. Um, but I think it's also a really interesting writing exercise you're kind of coming in and you're sort of like doing a post-mortem on season one and a diagnosis of like, okay, what do we love about season one? What do we think we could go further in? What are the superpowers of the show? One of the things I know we felt, for instance, coming out of season one and into season two is that like, the character of Tori like doesn't have a ton to do in season one. And we sort of were like, well, Liana seems really good. The actress who plays Tori, like, I wonder what would happen if we gave her more. Like, and we didn't know any of the actors coming. Like, obviously, we knew of them and had seen their work, but you just kind of don't know. And then you get to set and you see, like, oh my God, everything we gave Tori was incredible. So you start to see things where it's like, how can we expand where was there still kind of meat on the bone that they hadn't gone for yet? And so that was a really exciting part of developing.
Annie, do you like to bring in your series regulars into the room and introduce them to the writers and have a little discussion with them? And are you one of those showrunners?
We definitely did bring them in and talk to them, and for sure. And it's funny because I find like, we're also, the writers room is such a like haven for us. It's like our place, where we feel we just create an environment where it's so comfortable and everyone hopefully can share their personal lives and that we mine our own like lives and experiences and feelings. And it's really, I just love every time I get to be in a writer's room. I feel so grateful. It's such a warm, wonderful environment for us. But it's interesting when the actors come in, they get intimidated. They get nervous, and it's funny to remember, like, oh yeah, I guess, because most of the time in our business, actors they're out in front of everything. Like they're the face, they're the voice of the show. But like when we're sitting there inventing things, Yeah, so I find we're very welcoming, like, yeah, come on in. Like, let us, after we've had a little bit of time to kind of invent like the broad strokes of the season, it's really great to invite them in and go, here's what we're thinking, here are the big arcs. What do you think? And we find that like they get they were like grateful just to be thought of so much. And they were kind of they were just really um they were into it. There was very little like friction about it. There was just a lot of like enthusiasm and being on board. What do you guys, I mean, isn't that what, right, Max?
I think it was really interesting that none of us were, including Debbie, involved in the writing of season one, and being on shows where the writers all come back from season one to season two. We've all seen the show and what now is made, but we haven't seen what the audience has seen. We've seen it through our own eyes, writing the show and grinding and being on set. And like, you almost have a completely skewed perspective on what the show really is. And so having us come in, having just seen it fresh as viewers, I think was a really interesting experience. And we all got to kind of pick and choose the things that really appealed to us, things we thought we could improve on. And it was kind of a unique experience that I'd never really been a part of, because even times when you come on a new season of a show, kind of hesitant to go like, well, I didn't like this thing. And it was kind of a very like fresh, open environment to talk about like, what can we improve upon? What did we love? What do we want to see more of? And it was a really interesting experience that I personally.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Just to echo it, I mean, it was cool it was my first time getting to be like working on a lot, like in a room as a writer. And I think like that informed a lot of what we got to do with these characters. And just getting to watch, like I just said, like the table read, like what a pro Kaylee is. Like you're just like, damn, these people, like it's like a lot of people at the top of their game. So I think it was just sort of rising tide kind of a feeling, which was one of the benefits I think of getting to write where you shoot.
It's funny you say that. I noticed season one, I saw glimmers of it, but season two, I really saw it in Ava's character. I was like, well, she's like a modern day Lucy. Like
Yeah,
she's got moments where she's, especially when she's like, oh no, wait a minute, wait a minute. Like when she does that, like she is just
yeah, she's
so good.
got just incredible like comedic instincts and gifts, and so it's just really, she's really fun to write for.
And
It's
Um,
all the actors, I feel like I'm a former actor, so I'm constantly looking at details, and everybody plays to the end of cut. Nobody, like if it
yeah.
turns, if the camera moves, they're still there. Like each and every person, I'm constantly looking at. I've never seen a mess up once on this show. Everybody.
Yeah, that's a cool thing to notice. Like they're very intense. I know, and Chris is like they're a really fun combination, a really fun duo because, you know, Chris Messina is like such a
So cute.
serious dramatic actor in but he's actually really funny, but
It's
he
hilarious.
himself is
Yes.
somebody who's like real strengths are with drama, and so he loves preparation and intensity, and Kaylee just has such a lightness to her, so that it's a really really great dynamic because they really play off each other, and then you want to write to it more and more, so
But I think that's part of the chemistry, knowing that that is his background, and he's playing in a comedy pretty much, but he plays it very straight, which I
right,
think makes him so believable.
yeah.
Especially compared to Tom's character, like it's so, different, but the chemistry, everybody is like damn near perfect. It's ridiculous, you know.
Well, and it was fun because he's playing one thing, we inherited from season one, him playing this former pro athlete. And so playing into that kind of intensity, because that's also kind of his approach with acting. And then speaking to how people's backgrounds inform them, our friend Spin is like a really serious swimmer, and has this like very serious athletic background. And so it was really fun the way she was able to kind of like clue us into that
So helpful.
I don't know, Mamba mentality. What do you call it? Like the real, because the rest of us are just like, huh? What does it mean to care that much about sports and be that intense?
It's life or death.
How is it connected to murder? And so Spin was able to give us some insight about that.
That's
Right,
good.
Spin?
Right. It was very fun. I think at times I was like, had to remind myself, like, this is not therapy, Spin. This is not the tennis show. Because it was so fun for me to get to, explore like the depths of that. And like Chris also was like really, to Annie's point, like diving in and cared about the tennis and cared about the mentality. And it's fun. It's not what you would expect. Like having watched season 1 as a fan and seeing his tennis background, I was obviously, I was a collegiate swimmer, so that was sort of where I went. But it was like, it's also a comedy and you're having fun. And so it was a surprise and a fun way, I think, to get into the room and be like, oh, cool. Annie and Jaclyn want to like really dive into the mentality behind this, and then make it funny. So it was great. Yeah.
I mean, it shows. I had a feeling. I'm like a huge sports buff too, but I'm more like about like boxing and MMA, and like I watched the Super Bowl and the main basketball, the finals, but I don't watch the season. You know what I mean? But any of the boxing and all this stuff, I'm like right there. I know who they are. I know the stats. You know what I mean? I know what's going on, but all the rest of it, I'm one of those different gay dudes. Okay. So that tells me why you brought in Spindrift. What do you think the others had that you were like, oh, this person's perfect for this room for what I need? What were you and Jaclyn looking for?
Yeah, I think in the case of like, Amelia just wrote like a really knockout sample, just like a really standout, excellent script that had family drama in it and some procedural elements. And it's just really like right there on the page for me, just seeing people who, can really deliver. And, she really continued to do that. So, and then Max, same thing, just like wrote this really funny pilot about postpartum depression. And so like his ability to write, first of all, when I was reading this, I'm like, wait, I mean, the female characters are just so like, just as like nuanced and funny and real as the male characters. And I'm like, how dare you? Um, how dare you be so good at both of those things? But that was just so that's really rare and cool to see. And then just like that ability to mine so much like real comedy out of a really dark situation. That felt like a huge add to the show, you know? Um, and so it's like that combination of different strengths that you want to bring to the team, I'm trying to find the baseball metaphor, he's like I don't know. He's like
No, it makes
Mookie
sense.
Betts. Like he's like a right fielder who can throw
Wow.
somebody out at home, and then also like hit really well. But then if you put him in a shortstop, oh my God, he's so good.
Love it. I love
Max is like Otani's translator.
it. What do you got to say about that, Max? All that love from you.
I
Oh
think
my
Spin
God.
is trying to say that I take advantage of a situation and use it to my benefit.
Great.
It's like having
Great burn.
that's a good one.
Spin, you're really, if the goal of this is to see like inside the writer's room, you're really seeing, this was the daily events of Spin just giving me constant shit and everyone else laughing. That was 90% of our day, and then we would break story.
Yeah.
The only guy in the room. they
And
see
me
you.
talking about Mookie Betts.
Yeah. You really are getting the full sample.
I missed it. It's fun.
Yeah.
let's talk about. Here's something I want to bring up. This is fascinating to me. You guys are so good at bringing the element of comedy, suspense, satirical, drama, crime, all the elements in every single episode. I haven't seen what the scripts look like on paper. I plan to, or somebody can send me a script. I want to see how do you guys write the scenes where I don't know what you guys call it on the show when they go into their head and something
Yes.
happens and they come back and they're still in the same place or something. What do you
Yeah.
guys call it on the show, and what are the rules that you guys establish for that?
It's a good, that's a good question. I mean, that's a big thing that I feel like when we started, Annie and I talked a lot about was like maybe something that we like just even the thing we were talking about looking at season one and then wanting to what can we improve on, what can we change, what can we, and I think one of the things we all felt in season one is that there was a lot of opportunity in the fantasy sequences that were there, um, but that we wanted to be clearer about when we were in fantasy and when we weren't, and specifically whose perspective we were in, and what that was saying about that person's experience, so that we would know that those fantasies had sort of meaning to the audience as we're watching them, as opposed to just being like, oh, that was a fantasy like afterwards. And um, I mean, in terms of script notation, it would just be, new slug line description and then what happens, and then when we come back it would be as we were,
Okay.
but we would
Would you say fantasy or something, or what is it? What is it
we
called?
talked about them as fantasies, but I think it would be like like for instance in episode 2 there's like an interrogation room pops up while like she's being talked to, and I think in the script it just says like as she sees them, you know the harsh light of an interrogation room comes on, interior interrogation room. And I think it was originally slugged as a separate scene as though we popped to it. Like it was like a sudden smash too. And then it was in production. Um, Alex Buono, our producing director, had such great visual and visions for what are cool ways to experience that. And he had sort of the idea for things to what if we're in the field and then the walls actually like come up in the field, and so we adjust the scripts to accommodate that. But when when there's an idea, it was definitely like I felt more than a lot of shows, this felt like good ideas could come from anywhere, and I think that speaks to Annie's leadership, that just like when someone had a great idea it was like, yeah, let's go that way. um
Yeah,
but
I
yeah.
definitely felt you guys elevated where they took it in season one. Like the way they used it in season one was also brilliant, but I thought you guys elevated it slightly by it coming in times you were least expecting it to come, you know, for me. And I was
Yeah.
like, even the moments where Ava would go out to the park and talk to the bad, parents or whatever, and the light would hit her, and we'd be in her head, if you will, seeing what she sees, and she's constantly like blocking her face. Like just the usage of that, I don't remember them doing that in one. So to me, I thought you
Yeah,
all.
in the season one, like Jaclyn was saying, they were designed differently, and I know like the producing team said that the idea was to kind of trick the audience, to make it seem real and then pull the rug out after. And so I think that only works, that at a certain point the audience gets I think a little tired of that, like they're not going to be tricked anymore. So I think we changed the rules this season so that we were no longer tricking them. We were going to indicate like we're going into a fantasy here and this is this person's point of view. So it just was also, I think it's just the rhythm of knowing that, yeah, like Max was saying, when you've been an audience of a show and not just behind the scenes of it, then you can kind of relate to and understand maybe where, the audience would be ahead of an idea and then, adjust.
So you guys had the writers' room on Universal. Was that where you guys stages were, or and
Yeah, yeah,
so
we shot on the Universal
so
lots.
the so Ava and her husband's house, was that an exterior shot then you were actually on the stage, or did you guys shoot those? I mean, they
Yeah,
really look like homes.
yeah, they built a beautiful set for their house on the stage, and then we had a location. We actually changed the location, the exterior location in season 2 because we couldn't get the house from season 1, but we were able to kind of through TV magic, we were able to find a similar enough house that we could kind of fake it, but careful viewers can see that it's actually a different place. Yeah.
I like that.
But Debbie probably talked to how we notated that. I don't know. How did we do it? Because we've notated, but you also, I think you have your script, but you also have a lot of conversations, So I think I would say showrunning is like you have, it's kind of like if you've ever done any construction on a house, you don't just like say it once what you want. You have to say it like 750 times. And then when you have to get there and like say it another 750 times. So that's kind of how it doesn't just stop with the script. It's also the producing part is also just communicating to everybody what the intentions are. And then communicating it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. So yeah, that's kind of how you get it the way you want it. Is just endless conversations.
You want to piggyback off of that, Debbie?
I mean, Jaclyn pretty much described when we would break into those kinds of scenes, it was basically just slugged as another scene sometimes, or sometimes within the scene. And if it broke out as another scene, I would notate when we returned to reality with resume present day or resume scene, whatever was most appropriate for where we had taken everybody.
Hey, Annie, let me ask you a question. Being that you came and took over Craig's show, how did you add your voice to the show so that it still felt like the show we all know from season 1, like Jaclyn said, but yet it had a little of you in there? Was there?
Yeah, I think not just me, but like this group of people, it was also just adding a lot of voices because I think, you get the opportunity with the second season of the show to kind of grow the world a little bit. So we have just we have more characters and we have more perspectives. And I think just for me, it was a lot about the female characters because that's just where I come from. So having more, getting more inside the head of some of the female characters that maybe got a little less attention in season 1 was something we had fun with. And part of that was also just the reality of, you know, the character and the actress were pregnant in season 1, and the character and the actress had a baby in season 2, and we had no say in that. That just happened. So that was something and then I just happened to have the experience of, and some of our team also had the experience of being, you know, a new mom and how that changes you. So that we definitely brought that in too.
That's fun. I talk about this cast. I was telling my husband the other day, as I was binging this season 2, and he was like, he kept coming in and I'd be cracking up about something, or he'd just be staring, like he'd come in the room and just be staring there for like a whole sequence. I'd be like, you could come in and watch it. And he's like, oh, I'll catch it later. I'll catch it later. But he kept commenting on, man, the acting is like so solid. Like I could just tell, just standing here. And Tom's character, he does something in season 1, he does it in season 2 the same, where he turns on the serial killer. He's like Two-Face, what do they call it, where you have multiple personalities or something? Where and I'm wondering if that's planned on the page or if that's something he does naturally and just turns it off and on, or if it's directed that way or whatever. Can you just talk about that a little bit? Just curious.
Yeah, Jaclyn can speak to that because she spent even more time on set than I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing with Tom's character. I think coming into season 2, with the cliffhanger that was there in season 1, you you start to run out of runway, or there's the potential to run out of runway for that character, um, because he had become, he was a serial killer. And so there was this challenge of how do you reset and like make him try to capture some of that like unease that the early season one had of like, how do we feel about this guy when we now know he's just this monstrous character? And so I think the idea of sort of him going and trying to get sober, um, and sort of it gave him a thing to play that was like he had something to sell to everybody on the show. Like the character had something he was trying to convince everybody of, which gave us so much room for fun about like, okay, where is the mask? When is the mask showing? When is the mask slipping? Like, and Tom's such a cerebral actor. Him and Chris are sort of similar in that way. They both really are like just like thoughtful, intellectual actors. And Tom asked great questions about like what do I think is happening here? Like what am I trying to convince them of? When is the real, when is the, and in terms of scripting, like we definitely had the intention of, his action for the season was in a lot of ways trying to sell and charm these people to get sort of back in their good graces too. We talked a lot about the idea of, he showed them by doing the podcast and stuff with them in season one, he like let them in a real way. Like he there was like an intimacy to like there's a vulnerability to allowing Ava and Nathan like to see him and his truth. And that like what happens when we do that sometimes as people is we pull back when we realize, oh shoot, I was vulnerable, I showed too much. And so we're like, okay, what's like the comic version of that when you're a serial killer? And it's, oh, I'm not a serial killer anymore, I've gotten better. And so giving him sort of a lie to play.
98 days.
Yeah. Hey, 98 days. He just wants to just one day at a time. And I'm sober, so I also like enjoyed the satirical look at, the sobriety, like not sobriety industrial complex, but just like the AA language and the like all of those things. Like I think there's something very fun about, one of the things that I think good sobriety, um, I think anybody who's like doing the work in a real way versus somebody who's not is like you'll see people who like get sober. I think we see it a lot in therapy language that people use where it's like some people are getting better and some people are just like, oh, I learned the language that allows me to be a terrible person just using like I'm actually like it's a trauma response of mine and that's why it's okay that I'm treating you like shit. Um and so like I had a lot of fun just in like seeing a serial killer like employ the language of self-improvement to like sort of allow him to still be a monster. I just think there's fun in that.
Interesting. I like that. It's funny. I was concerned as a podcaster myself that what you guys were going to do in season two. I was really happy to see it was done in season two, only because, and you guys know this, you guys in season one they accomplished everything they needed to accomplish. They already made 15 million views. They already did all these things. It's like where else can they go with the podcast? And I love that you guys took it more to family, if you will. And of course, Tori has her thing going on, so that was a nice little thing between her and Tom. So that I just think you guys it took it for a ride, so that the audience was able to still get on board with the same characters, minus the podcast, and you didn't miss it at all. Not for me, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to dramatize, and visually. So I think like some of our youthful writers like Amelia and Spin, they like had this idea about the using them starting to make TikToks about murder. And so that felt like fresher and also more visual um, for our form of storytelling. And then you're kind of in it more immediately. So that was just like a fun way to kind of tick it up in season two.
that was really fun. That was maybe one of the most fun things that we did. Just from like a perspective of being able to understand like society's link to these serial killers. And, you know, we talked a lot, like Annie was talking about, like, you know, like an appeal to a woman for why you would be interested in, you know, serial killers in general. And I think that like it felt natural to then explore like what is the flip side of that, and why are these crazy men essentially killing people. And so it felt like a natural kind of partner to that to just go into. And you know, it was serendipitous that Chris's character was going through a little bit of a crisis, and that like he was now having a kid and he didn't know what his purpose was in life. And I think that that's, you know, where we at least kind of talked about a lot of this stuff stems from, is you know, guys that are not happy with whatever's going on in their lives. Obviously, I think people that are enjoying their lives probably aren't out killing people. At least is my take on it. And so it kind of felt like a fun thing to explore, like what pushes you to these links, and why do these guys go to these crazy places? And so we got to have a lot of fun with the male retreat of it all, and diving into the male psyche of like, you know, essentially, are these guys just cavemen and that's all there is to it, or is there more psychologically going on?
Hmm.
And we got to put antlers on Chris, and so it was a real win for everyone.
It's always fun when someone in the room is like, hey, what if, one day, what if we put antlers on their heads and they were in a bonfire in Tulum and then they ran towards each other. And then you're like out there at midnight in in shooting this thing and you're like, remember when like 3 months ago you were like, hey, what if? And now we're like doing this thing and it's like hundreds of people's jobs to create nonsense. And you're like freezing out there and these like doing it. So, but that's like the most fun part of our job is when something like that, like some ridiculous idea in the room becomes like a reality. And I think of that, Jaclyn and I, like our earliest conversation when we were first talking about the show, a lot of that stuff really, we did it, like a lot of like, because Jaclyn was early on like, well, what if, how much of a reach is it to say like how different is a serial killer from any other like these sort of you know men in our culture who have done demonstrably terrible things and then kind of see themselves as victims, right? And have grievance and are kind of like, um, really I'm the one that's the victim of my actions. And so what if we kind of dove into that and some of our earliest kind of like, wouldn't it be fun ifs, like we got to do them. So
Yeah,
it's
that
pretty.
happened. It's kind of crazy. It's fun.
It was interesting to see as you discover how much Matt is actually kind of a liar too. You know, with what he's been telling everyone. You know,
Yeah.
to make you become on his side. You know, he's got that other person. Go ahead, Jaclyn.
Well, I was gonna say, I think you're onto something with like it is a feeling of you watch these. There's an obsession with the killer. I mean, this is so much of what the show, the season ended up being about. But the obsession is often with, not often, always with the killer and their psychology, and not about the people they harmed.
Hmm.
And I think the idea that one of the satirical things we were trying to get at is this idea of like even like like we're sort of doing that with Matt in making it like we're telling the audience like, oh, he's getting better, and like, is he getting better? And like, meanwhile he's doing terrible things, and yet it's like we are doing exactly what people on the show are doing to the West Side Ripper, of being like, oh, like the West Side Ripper is so interesting, and like, not to spoil the things that happen in the season because people should watch it. Um, but the idea that like, what about the victims of these people and how they get forgotten about much more quickly than the people who committed the crimes, and like their legacies are sort of lost while the people who like did these terrible things get like books written about them for years.
I
Yeah.
feel like part of Annie's vision early on to add a new murder mystery and a new killer gave us a lot of room to play with new satirical elements and themes just in the genre itself. It was just a really smart place to start and really fun to break.
I love that you guys decided to use, I don't know, I'm not giving away this, but there was a copycat in season two. Because now it's a whodunit and who's who's the person and is it that person, is it that person, that person, you know. Um, can you talk anything about any of the new characters that you guys brought in?
Yeah. Yeah, we did feel that was another thing with the reset of a season two that just felt like we really needed a kind of forward moving story as well. You don't want to be looking back too much in a show. So we wanted there to be, a new mystery and a new killer, and we thought it would be fun for when the challenge of having a serial killer as a main character, is it's that was a kind of new one for me at least. So having him have, competition, like somebody else out there doing it, and what would that mean? And how our characters would have to figure out who it was and how it connected to, their own story. Can I say that? I'm trying to say it without giving anything away. Um, but yeah, so that gave us just a lot of new territory to head into. And that's always good, because in the streaming world, story moves so quickly and you burn it up really fast, and so you need new things to be moving towards um in the season, and so that was a big one for us. And we wanted there to be, and there is also, like, again, this comes from having been an audience member, right? You don't want to feel cheated. You binge this season, you want there to be something satisfying at the end. So we just knew from the beginning we were going to have some answers, so we were going to get somewhere with it. And I think we did.
Yeah, I would say your finale ended just as strong as season one, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. We
It-
wanted to
it's not
get
better.
maybe some answers, and we asked some questions, right?
Yeah,
Let me
you want.
ask. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jaclyn.
As you say, you want a cliffhanger. You always want to, like, a show like this, like a good cliffhanger is great, but you also want to, like, feel like you got somewhere. I think Annie's totally right with that. And I think that's, it's so fun to plot those twists and turns and get to meet a bunch of new great characters played by amazing actors and actresses. And yeah.
Yeah, you definitely
Yeah.
left it in this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Max.
Oh, I was just gonna say we got to create a bunch of problems that season 3 writers will have to deal with. So that was a
Yeah.
fun little pay it forward.
Yeah, I was left feeling like how are they going to come out of it? I don't understand. So that's how you did your job. You know. Speaking of crime and serial killer, just curious, I believe that one or two of you guys came from crime shows? Forgive me for not remembering who. Um,
Ben and Amelia.
Yes, right. Did anybody else go down that rabbit hole of doing research on some of the other serial killers to get into the headspace and things like that? Did anybody find themselves doing that?
Just coming from a crime show doesn't necessarily mean like specifically the psyche of a serial killer. So that was something, I wanted to get really prepared for, and was listening to My Favorite Murder and reading I'll Be Gone in the Dark in the week. It was the holiday break right before our room started. So that was, a very festive way to get in the headspace.
I did way too much research on zodiac ciphers and um yeah, too much dark. I feel like at some point you just have to, like, I like want to leave the NSA a note on my computer being like, I'm working on a serial killer show.
Yeah, you really brought the intensity around the ciphers, and you and Spin. I mean, I like tapped out at a certain point of like, you guys are gonna have to sit through these props meetings because I don't understand. But you guys did, and it works. I mean, all the stuff we have in there also, like, because you're living in a world now where people can, hit pause and then go on Reddit. And so, you gotta come very correct in all of that stuff. And so luckily I had people I work with here who are better at that stuff than I am.
It blew my mind watching Jaclyn in the room, because she'll never say this, but like literally like the stuff that's in the episode where we see the cipher, most of it came immediately like from Jaclyn's brain, like on the day in the room. Like, Chief Nye on the mount. It's like, how did you just figure that out? Like, Jaclyn just has a puzzle brain that was.
Yeah. And then you had to actually make it, we had to go out
Hey,
and
Making the cipher.
Jaclyn would be like, "Why did I volunteer to be the cipher person?"
I had to do so much cipher research and so
so
much
much.
because I kept being like, well, I'll tell them what it needs to do, and then props or somebody can make it. And then being in those meetings and they would just look at me and be like, so what is it? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
It would be
all
like,
right."
really, they're like, where's Annie?
Yeah. And so
Annie,
I think she went to the
Annie went to the
bathroom like a day and a half ago. Like,
Thank-
I just heard the word cipher and disappeared.
Well, thank you
Oh.
guys. We appreciate you guys all hanging out with us for
Thank
the
you so much.
Inside the Writers Room. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. You're just a fun, awesome moderator. So it's really
Thank you.
nice.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Inside the Writers Room, based on a true story. Thank you guys, Annie, Jaclyn, Amelia, Debbie, Spindrift, and Max. You guys are all awesome. Everybody, please go out and watch this show. It's on Peacock. Super dope show. Super smart, clever. Acting is off the chain. I'm telling you, all chains in my opinion. Definitely dope. Well, thank you, Writers Guild Foundation, for having me. I appreciate you guys. I'm Hilliard Guess. I'm on all social media. You guys all on social media? Can people follow you guys? Is there a place to follow the show?
You got to follow me on foot. But I'm usually somewhere in LA. But what about you guys?
Google me if you want to follow something, but I'm good if you don't want to.
Yeah, just check out the show on Peacock.
Okay, no problem. Well, thank you guys. You guys have a great one, and I will talk to you guys soon. Enjoy. Writers Guild Foundation. Peace, you guys.